As I was reading over the gospel for this liturgy and praying about what the Lord wanted us all to hear today, I was confused at first, because the gospel began with Jesus discussing with the Pharisees the issues of marriage and divorce. And then if you noticed, at the end of the gospel, Jesus suddenly is blessing little children. And I kept asking myself, what do they have to do with each other? What is the first part about divorce and that, and then Jesus blessing the children? Jesus, of course, we know from the scriptures, has a very high view of marriage. While most rabbis and Jewish teachers and Pharisees would permit divorce under certain circumstances, Jesus did not. To Jesus, the commitment made by a man and woman for a lifelong relationship of love reflected God's intention from the beginning of creation. It was the ideal. The two were to become one flesh. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife, and the two become one body. This is indeed a high and noble ideal. I would guess that many married couples here today would be quick to add, it might be a high ideal, but it is often not very pretty. Every marriage realistically includes misunderstandings and arguments, mistakes, and maybe even hurts. Marriage is a high road, but it is often a rough road. Marriage can be filled with blessings, but it takes communication, patience, and a whole lot of sacrifice. A Jewish humorist once said, "Love at first sight is easy to explain. It's when people have been looking at each other for 40 years that love becomes a miracle." As followers of Jesus, we believe in that miracle. We profess that miracle. Jesus affirms that married life is worth living, that it is a holy union reflecting the very love of God. Jesus is calling those that enter into the marriage life to persevere in a lifelong and faithful union. While marriage can be difficult, we believe that lifelong growth and faithfulness are indeed possible. Yet to reach that possibility, the high ideals of patience and forgiveness and sacrifice need to be embraced. I'm well aware that in this community, there are those who tried to live these high ideals and it didn't work out. For them, nothing is more important than to find hope. Our call as a church is to assist those folks in finding that hope. Our role is to be there for those who maybe have failed in marriage and remind them that even though divorce seems like a death blow, there can be and will be life again and love again, and perhaps maybe another marriage in which to live the high ideals of this lifelong fidelity and love. We need to be a community that assures those whose marriages fail that God does not reject them, nor does the church, and that there are ways that we can pastorally resolve a second marriage and invite them to full Eucharistic fellowship. Now let us look at the second scene in the gospel where Jesus blesses the children. Well, we must often think of children as innocent and pure, except your kids, but we think of children as innocent and pure. In the ancient world, children were the marginalized, whatever that word is, marginalized, the broken, the fragile, the ones who depend on others for survival, because really that's what a child does. He needs the adults. He needs the grown-ups to care for them and help them go through this growing cycle in their life. When Jesus blesses and welcomes the children, in that little section we read, Jesus is blessing and welcoming the weak and the broken. Once we understand this, we might be able to see how the two scenes in the gospel fit together tonight. The first presents a high ideal. The second recognizes a hard reality. The first lays out a lifelong commitment of love and fidelity. The second shows us how God reacts when we are unable, perhaps, to live that ideal. I have worked over the years with many people who have experienced separation and divorce. I have not met one who didn't feel broken, their dreams dashed, and their future uncertain. In their brokenness, they become the children who Jesus welcomes. Jesus is not afraid to challenge us to a high ideal, to call us to a lifelong commitment of love. But when a marriage fails because of infidelity or abuse or neglect, because of incompatibility or the lack of love, Jesus is the first to reach out and welcome those who are broken. We are called to follow Jesus' example. We should not be afraid to hold up marriage as a valued and holy state, both in our families and in our society. But when a marriage fails, we should be also the first to welcome a divorced parent, a child, a brother or sister. Others may judge them. Others, like the disciples in today's gospel, might try to keep them away. But we should echo the words of Jesus and say, "Let them come to me. Do not prevent them, because the kingdom of God belongs to such as these."